All right, welcome everybody. I'll go ahead and read the antitrust statement. Let me just move my face out of the way. It is the policy of the Omniair Consortium that the organization, its officers, board of directors, members, and participants in its activities shall comply in all respects with federal and state antitrust and/or fair competition laws, regulations, and rules as may be applicable. Accordingly, no activity or discussion at any Omniair-sponsored meeting or other function related to competition or relating to practices that may restrain trade is permitted. Such prohibited topics include establishing prices, allocating markets, encouraging boycotts, regulating production, or any other understanding or agreement that may be construed as anti-competitive. Welcome, and I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jason.
Thank you so much. And I've talked about a little bit about our agenda, so let's get right into it. So first off, can we advance the slide? Brookinda. There we go. So first off, we'd like to welcome Caltrans, which is our newest member. Caltrans has been actively participating for some time in our RUC working group, but they have finally decided to take the plunge and join the organization. Lauren Verhoda is our key contact there, but we are quickly spreading out to beyond RUC issues, and they'll be populating many of our working groups with special attention to our connected vehicle technologies. Do we have Lauren or another representative of Caltrans on the call?
Yes, I am here.
Lauren, floor is yours. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thank you. Very excited to finally have some of the hoops that we had to jump through to join overcome. As Jason mentioned, we had tried to be kind of present over the last couple of years, just trying to have a voice about potential end users in the conversation as J3217 is in development and rolling out. And we're also really excited that, we started this being a part of Omniair through our road use charge program, which I head, but we're expanding it to our connected and automated vehicles team as well. So we're really hoping to have a lot of different angles of Caltrans involved and giving that kind of end user perspective of what ultimately are we going to need as we're trying to expand into these areas. So thanks very much.
Excellent, Lauren. Thank you. We're looking forward to working with you and your team. Next, please. So if you are not already a member, we certainly encourage you to think about joining. You can scan that QR code to our application page. We also have a new membership brochure, which will be distributing shortly. And we have 3 levels of membership: associate, executive, and sustaining partner, which is sort of our all-you-can-eat policy, including certifications and PlugFest registration fees. So if you have questions about membership, please reach out to Ryan Hall or myself, or just click on that QR code and be happy to chat with you. Next, please. And if you are a member, this is an organization that, for better or worse, runs on membership dues. And so we have collected a good percentage of our membership dues, but not quite all yet. And so I know that it can be a little slow this time of year, but just a gentle reminder that a few of you may be overdue, and we'll be reaching out next week to those of you to see if we can't help recover our $2 or whatever may be missing. And you can click on that QR code and pay online if you like as well. Next, please. And we have some news this week. We just announced that Neology, which is a longstanding executive level member, has just had their field test site for tolling testing in Bryan, Texas, authorized. We have an authorized field test site program for both connected vehicles as well as tolling. I believe this might be our 4th or 5th authorized field test site. So if you have a facility either for tolling or for connected vehicles you think might be a good candidate for that program, let us know. We're happy to chat with you about it. But congratulations to the Neology team. Anyone from Neology? Dave Missimer, anyone here? Well, anyway, congratulations again. Next, please. And coming up, we have one of our two big testing events of the year is coming up in the spring. Week of May 13th, we are going back to Ann Arbor, Michigan for the OmniAir PlugFest at M-City. We are partnering with M-City as well as the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute, UMTRI, and putting together what I think is going to be a fantastic event. We'll have a week of laboratory and bench testing. Our technical preparation group has been meeting on a monthly cadence that will be increasing to every 2 weeks now. Aaron Moore leads that activity, just had a meeting this morning and been making great strides there. We also are planning a full day workshop in the middle of the week. So on the 15th of May, we'll have some keynote speaker announcements coming up soon, some panels, and some opportunities for live demonstrations. We'll be inviting more infrastructure owner operators and more V2X deployers to kind of come and see testing, do tours of testing, and do some technology demonstrations for things that we may not be incorporating in PlugFest testing yet, but that are coming down the pike. So really some great opportunities there. Our super early bird pricing, which is of course the testing tickets that are per company, per testing team. That $2,000 discount is gone, but now we still have a $1,000 discount using the discount code Last Chance. You can click on that QR code or just visit our Eventbrite and register there or on our website. I know that Ryan wanted to say a couple of words. We'll go to the next slide because we are looking for a call for speakers and for demos. But Ryan, do you want to say a little bit about PlugFest?
Sure. I mean, we've already had a really great response. We have 12 members who took advantage of the really good sweetheart deal before Valentine's Day. So I really wanted to thank all of these companies for stepping up early for your early participation, because I think that helps show the early demand for testing and its importance. You know, in addition to testing, we will also have a policy conference, and we're looking at inviting different keynote speakers, including the Lieutenant Governor of Michigan, who's a U of M alumni. So we're really excited about the what we learned from testing, and also the networking opportunities that are available through that particular piece. If you go to the next one, Berkenda. So we have our call to speakers that went out. So if you have a great topic idea, please reach out to Berkenda, Jason, or myself. We're really interested in pulling together very dynamic presentations on all kinds of different subjects. We have a list of subjects that we thought might be intriguing to members, but also if you have something else that we've maybe not heard of, maybe different applications with AI, please let us know. And this year we have a really big space. If Berkenda can advance to the next slide, it will show we have this really large area. They call it the football. It's at UMTRI's North Campus. So we have this very large facility that we can set up with the stage. We have about 15 areas where you can have a booth or to set up around the perimeter for different state DOTs and participants to come by and talk to you about what it is that you're doing at the PlugFest. So if you've already registered for PlugFest, you can have a booth. Just talk to me. If you haven't signed up for PlugFest but you'd like to have a booth and you're not testing, give me a call or a text or send me an email, and I can go through that process of what it would look like to have a booth at this particular event. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ryan. And if you are interested in PlugFest, you have questions about it, you've never been to one before, just reach out and we're happy to chat with you. So on working group, onto the working group updates. We have currently 10 working groups and sub-working groups. I see that we have Frank Perry here. I'm going to ask Frank to walk through, unless we see other working group chairs, some of the updates. Let's go on to the first update. Frank, you want to speak to this?
Sure. So certification working group, they are developing program policy manuals, and it looks like that's going out. 722 is in a 14-day ballot within the working group. Also 756 which is aftermarket safety device. That document scope is in development, as well as interoperability certification scope. So cybersecurity looks like 609.2.1 test specification is now looks like it's out for the 30-day IP review and preparing for board approval. .2 specifications currently being updated with a couple different test cases. SCMS manager is in the process of publishing an updated CTL and new certificate installation instructions for the Plugfest, and then the working group has approved the publication and guidance notes that provide clarification on 609.2 and .2.1. The technical working group, we are currently in the process of doing module certification scope test case updates. We're also looking for feedback on the UCAM test spec. So this is a kind of an enhanced, gives us some enhanced testing capabilities on the bench for doing application and other types of device testing. And that's getting ready to go out for a 14-day ballot. And then we're also looking at device interoperability test specifications. So next slide, I guess. So heard a little bit already about Plugfest. So we had a meeting this morning. There's another meeting, I believe March 7th, so 2 weeks. It's 9 a.m. Eastern. Folks interested in joining. From the connected infrastructure, or the used to be the RSU working group, they are continuing development of 1218 use cases. The V2X application working group is working on EEBL bench test specifications. So this is obviously emergency electronic brake light. Trying to get test this application on the bench. So working through specifications for there, as well as the UCAM, how to use the UCAM message for that and other application testing. And then for tolling, it's like we have document 825, which is tag programming and test specifications that's in progress. We're also looking at a multi-protocol conformance test tool. I think that's wrapping up, right, Jason? I think we're pretty close on that one. And then also we're looking at 6C coalition specifications.
That's right. Fantastic.
Okay, I got a couple more here. So road user charging. So that working group continues to focus on stakeholder outreach and testing certification scope. We've had presentations from subject matter experts with the goal of making sure the working group is on the same page as other Omniair directives. And then aftermarket safety device, we're working on test cases here, and we're going to track and align with SAE activities there as needed. And right now we're focusing on light passenger vehicles, and then we'll look at other classifications or other vehicle classifications in the future.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Very, very good rapid fire update. One thing I would just note is that we have 2 leadership opportunities. One for our ASD working group, Roger Berber of Danlaw, unfortunately, will no longer be able to chair for personal reasons, but we are looking for a new chair there. In the meantime, Mick Conley is going to be running those meetings. And then we are looking for a co-chair for our sub-working group associated with Plugfest test preparation to assist Aaron in case he has to be absent in any of the meetings. And we just want to make sure we have good coverage all through the run-up to this Plugfest. So I am very pleased to introduce our guest presenters. We have 2 guest presenters because we're getting lots of questions, right? I think that, once the initial waivers were issued last year, following the heels of the first report and order, There's been a lot of movement in C-V2X. We're seeing a lot of devices preparing for certification. One participating in PlugFest, two and applying for certification, but they also have questions about the spectrum. The regulatory uncertainty sort of remains. Some have asked us about how to apply for a waiver if they're not covered under the existing waivers. So that means there's new entrants into the industry. There's new guidance that's come out for equipment type authorization from the FCC for updated guidance. And then the question is, what's that path to the second report and order? What are those issues, and how, who's trying to address this? And I know that the US DOT has been very diligently pushing through this, and Justin's been leading that charge for the Joint Program Office, and we've invited him to come in and talk a little bit as well. So you've got a double header here. So we'll start with Mr. Johnson, and then we'll move on to Mr. Henderson. Councilor, floor is yours.
Jason, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thanks for asking me to join. I usually join every month. I usually with the mute on anyways, just to hear what's going on and catch up. Anyway, so I think probably most everybody on the call is kind of knows generally the context which gave rise to the C-V2X waiver. So I won't really go into that issue too much. But I thought a couple things, give kind of a status update, and then as Jason, where we are on the waiver request filed and the grants, kind of what the process is to file for a waiver, and then the second step required of entities, device manufacturers, they get a waiver request, still have to go and get FCC equipment authorization. And the new guidance on that issue and process that came out this past Friday, the 9th. So quickly, just where we are in terms of the applications and grants for these C-V2X waivers. The FCC to date has issued 3 grant orders, April 2020, all in 2023, April, August, and November. And these, what they did basically is, at least the first waiver grant in April was for what's called the joint waiver parties, which is kind of I think people understand who those are. Those are a combination of certain vehicle OEMs and several device manufacturers. The August 23 and the November 23 grant orders, what the FCC did is they consolidated certain groups of individual waivers that came in and addressed them all together. There are waivers still being filed. In fact, as recently as Monday, a waiver came in. I just checked the docket. So this is still an ongoing process, and certainly it's not, the FCC waiver grant process is certainly not shut down. The window is still open. I mean, we don't know when the FCC may issue its next order, but I would expect something probably shortly, since it's been since November, and there's a bunch of waivers that have been filed in the meantime. So to date, across these 3 orders, we have 39 entities that have received waivers to operate in the upper 30 megahertz band of the 5.9 gigahertz band using C-V2X technology. So what has happened effectively, I think, is that the April 2023 grant order, which is the one for what's the so-called joint waiver parties, that was the first one, has become a blueprint for subsequent waiver requests. And basically what that means is that other parties, including those in the August and November 2023 grant orders, basically said, we meet the standards approved in the waiver request back in April. So it's kind of what's become a little formulaic, and that the form of the waiver request, everybody's kind of using kind of the same form, which is fine. There's no problem with that. And I'll get it kind of talking about that process, how it works in terms of filing. So just a couple other notes. In July 2023, the FCC, at the request of the joint waiver parties, kind of made a technical modification to the waiver requirements. They removed the 20 dBm transmitter output level for OBUs. And then the last 3 bullets there, I just kind of listed the specific rules that are being waived under these waiver requests. I mean, again, this is very specific requirements now with the blueprint from the April 2023 grant is what everybody else is following. Okay, next slide. Okay, great. So the process for filing for a waiver is pretty much easy. You have to prepare a waiver document that you then will effectively post into the docket, the FCC docket for this matter, 19138. Again, people are using pretty much the same form based on the April 2023 grant order. So the bullets here just are a listing of the steps to go through. It's all done online. You go through the FCC website. There's a off the front homepage, there's a link to what's called the ECFS, which is the electronic comment filing system, which is the FCC's process for all parties to file any type of comment in all the FCC's public dockets. And you then go click submit a filing, you use the docket number, you upload your waiver request document as a PDF. You need to have that prepared beforehand. And then you just kind of scroll through, complete the process, and then ultimately submit the waiver. And then you get an email and a confirmation that says your waiver has been submitted. Again, there's no timeline that the FCC has specified that they act on these waivers. As I talked about initially, what the commission has done, and I expect them to do that going forward, continue to do that, is consolidate waiver requests that have kind of piled up and then deal with them as a group in subsequent orders. Next slide. So I alluded to this issue that's unique to device manufacturers. And I've had some communications with entities interested in filing waivers, and there's been some confusion over the FCC's equipment authorization process. And this applies only to manufacturers of RSUs and OBUs who are intimately familiar with this process. But the point here is that if you are a company that's manufacturing and wants to sell a radio device, a C-V2X radio device to operate in the upper 30 megahertz band, you first have to go get a waiver, okay, of the FCC's rules, as I've discussed. And this is a waiver, it's compatible, the same thing as applies to the vehicle OEMs who want to deploy, a C-V2X radio device in their vehicles, to a state or local transportation authority who wants to deploy C-V2X and needs to deploy RSUs, et cetera, using certified devices, okay? But equipment manufacturers, the FCC has a very specific process for radio devices to be authorized per the FCC rules, okay? That's separate than the Omni-Air certification. So just to be clear, that an equipment manufacturers who get a waiver of the C-V2X rules, they then have a second step. That step is to go through the FCC's equipment authorization process, okay? The waiver that they get does not waive those equipment authorization rules, okay? That's very important, and there's been some confusion over that, and I've seen some comments forwarded to me that said, hey, so-and-so is saying that we're a device manufacturer, we don't have to go through the FCC equipment process, authorization process, once we get a waiver. That's not true, okay? I just really want to reiterate that very strongly. So what the commission, and this ties into what the commission did on Friday. So the Office of Equipment, the OEM office, which is the equipment authorization office at the FCC that reviews this, put out a set of guidance. I don't have it summarized here, but we can, Jason or Ryan or others at Omnia, we can make that available. Put out on Friday a detailed guidance document on the steps that equipment manufacturers who received waivers have to go through to get C-V2X equipment authorization, okay? And it's not really anything out of the ordinary, but it is unique because we have this kind of special structure for waiver requests. So really what it is that the device manufacturers have to use the same FCC form 731, but they have to provide certain additional information, one, that they're applying under a waiver that they've received, attach a copy of that waiver, attest that they're going to operate under that waiver. And then this guidance also says, okay, what information has to be submitted to what's called a TCB, a telecommunication, what's it called? Which is a third party, I forget what the acronym means, but it's a third party that the device manufacturer will submit their device to go through the equipment authorization process. The equipment does not go to the FCC lab, it goes to these third parties. And there's what information has to be provided to these entities, to the TCB as part of the application, and then also what specific kind of technical rules that apply to device manufacturers under the waivers that they have to show compliance with to get the equipment authorization. So again, don't quiz me on what those technical rules, the specific of those technical rules are laid out in that guidance, things like out-of-band emissions, power levels, power limits, and stuff like that. Nothing that should be surprising, it's just that the applicable restrictions that are for C-V2X devices. Again, that Omniair, we can make available a copy of that or link to that the publication that just came out on Friday from the FCC. I think it should be helpful.
I'm gonna ask either Randy or Ryan, who should have a link to that, to drop in the chat box.
Yeah. So Jason, that's it. That's my summary.
Counselor, excellent as always. I know that many of you may have questions for Mark. I want to ask you to hold those, put them in the chat box, or raise your hand. But we're going to ask Justin to go ahead and give his presentation because it may answer your questions, because it is a little bit odd that we're working in this kind of waiver environment right now. But that's not always going to be the case. We're moving forward toward a second report in order, so there's hope. And here's Mr. Anderson to give you a little bit of hope. Justin?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Jason. Hey, everyone. I know a good number of you on this call probably know me already, but I'm Justin Anderson. I joined the ITS Joint Program Office back in July. Previously, I've worked a lot in the standards industry and supporting different ITS JPO projects as a contractor. Now I lead the Next Gen Wireless Communications Program and the Secure Credential Management Systems program that we're sort of restarting within DOT. So that's where I am. Yeah, that's today I want to give you all an update about one of the big main activities we've been working on, which is sort of trying to restart and move forward a second report in order for 5.9 gigahertz with the FCC. So I think trying to see if Burkinda, I think I can. I'm not sure how to advance the slide, so if maybe you could advance the slide for me. Thank you. Back in January, we started. We started coordinating last year on this, but in January we started having regular monthly meetings with NTIA and FCC to talk about technical discussions, mostly geared towards getting a second report in order published. And really the discussions are very much focused on, technical issues and operational rules for 30 megahertz. We've had 2 meetings so far. Our first meeting was January 10th. Second meeting was February 7th. And we're really laying out, the big technical issues. Obviously, for most folks on this call know, out-of-band emissions is one of the really big technical topics we've been talking with them about. And then there are other things that they're interested in as well. There have been proposals from industry for mechanisms that might allow LTE V2X to radiate at a higher power level, at around 33 dBm. Primarily, I think the use case for that is like emergency vehicles, the vehicles that you would want to be a little bit louder for, those types of status. But it could also allow devices to maybe not have to broadcast at 21 dBm, could somewhere a midpoint potentially. So we're going to be doing some out of bands emissions testing next month. out at Summit Point, West Virginia, to explore some of these things. We're going to try different out of bands emissions masks. We'll do more testing with the mask that the FCC is proposing. Right now, a lot of the testing in March is going to be focused on Uni 5, so the 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi bands, and their out of bands emissions target is minus 27 dBm per megahertz. So we're going to test that. We'll test also at minus 37 dBm, which is an industry sort of recommended out of bands emissions limit. We've done previous testing in Uni 4 that shows the issues with the out of band emission limits that are currently there in Uni 4. So this will focus a lot on Uni 5, but they're very much, it's very much the same from a physics perspective, the same sort of issue. So in general, I think results from both tests sort of support, these out of bands emissions discussions. The other thing we'll be testing is the different power levels for LTE V2X devices. We'll test at 21 dBm, we'll test at 33 dBm, and then somewhere in between, somewhere probably between 24 and 27 dBm. And just to see what is the effect of that on out of bands interference. And in parallel, we are also doing the analysis to see, what are the other repercussions of a higher power level within LTE V2X device, right? Obviously, it's not all positive. Increased power level means increased range, means increased, chances for congestion. So it's not all positive. There are obviously negative aspects to increasing power levels. So we're exploring both sides of that. But that's sort of some of the extremely near-term work that we're doing within the FCC. In fact, our February meeting, almost the entire meeting was sort of focused on discussing that Uni 5 test plan that we had been putting together. They gave us some feedback. We sort of gave them background on why we choose certain settings and things. So it was a good discussion, and that'll probably continue into next month. But the other great thing about having an open dialogue once a month with the FCC is we can use it also as an opportunity to check on the status of waivers, of equipment certifications, and other actions pending within the FCC, right? One of the things that we asked about in the last meeting was there were, obviously, as folks know, the 6 gigahertz rulemaking was published in January, but there was a further notice of proposed rulemaking that was supposed to be published alongside that. That hasn't been published yet. That included some updated language that we worked with the FCC on, asking about minus 37 dBm. So that's coming soon, we hope. The feedback is it's in the process. It's out of the FCC's hands, actually. It's in some other part of the process to get published. So hopefully that'll come out soon. That's one of the things that we can ask about. We also had heard I guess it was sort of complaints from some vendors around the certification process for their devices, that FCC certification, right? Not the Omnier certification, but the FCC certification. And so we asked the FCC about that as well. They said they were going to look into it, and I think it's helpful. Those are the types of things that are helpful if we know about them, to bring up to the FCC, because it can shake things loose if we bring it up in those meetings. So if anybody on the call is having issues either with their waivers or device certifications or other things, please feel free to reach out to me. Let me know, because we can use these monthly forums to sort of check in on those things and see if we could get a status. Sometimes we won't get anything, but at least I do feel it's still valuable to let the FCC know that we're tracking these issues, because like I said, I think in the background it can make a difference. Next slide, please. So near-term plans, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about doing some testing here in that March-April timeframe. Probably be starting, mid-March, late March, going into the first week or two of April. Again, looking primarily at the Uni 5 band out-of-band emissions targets, because we haven't had a chance to test that yet. And then we'll increase that LTE V2X power device levels just to see, again, what are the impacts on out-of-band emissions? Does that improve it somewhat? And if, it's just another data point. And then we're also, developing a roadmap of specific activities that'll lead to the second report order. The FCC has made it very clear to us that they cannot they don't set specific timelines or timeframes for their activities. They can't. They're sort of their priorities are I think set by the FCC commissioners. So if it's an FCC commissioner priority, it's then a priority for them, and things can move faster. And if it's not an FCC commissioner priority, it does not. Things can sort of slow down at certain points. So they have mentioned that they have a number of other priorities going on. We're working on making this a top priority for the FCC. And I know, and I'll give credit to some of our industry partners like the 5GAA, the ITS America, and the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. All three of them, I believe, have been in the commissioners, different FCC commissioners' offices recently, sort of pushing on the second report and order. So, I think as an industry, if you continue to push, it can, I think, can help, raise up the priority within the FCC's commissioner's office. So our proposal, which we think is aggressive but realistic, has us finishing these sort of technical tasks, throughout the spring and the summer, and hopefully having, a full second report and order draft in the fall. Hopefully maybe through that IRAC review process by late 2024, and in the Federal Register for posting and things, late 2024, early 2025. There's certain things obviously that the FCC has certain timeframes, like 60 days for comment or 30 days for comment, and then 30 days for comment response, those types of things, that there's no getting around those things. But I think, we do think it's, from our perspective at least, it's achievable to get something that the community will hopefully be able to review, this year. And that's what we're really pushing for here is something, a second report and order in 2024, because we know how much, and trust me, we've seen the VitaX deployment plan comments. We are listening and absorbing them, and the vast majority of groups that are commenting have stressed the importance of the second report and order. So it is great for folks to continue sending us those types of comments, because those are exactly the types of things we can use with the FCC to sort of try and push the priority. So again, we can't promise timeframes with the FCC, but we are trying to get something done right this year. We are trying to get to this, knock this out. Now, I'm not sure, that this report and order is going to have, everything in it, right? I mean, I think it'll very well define probably the 20 megahertz channel. I think it'll set, hopefully the out of bands emissions targets that we would like. It'll handle sort of those basic things. I'm not sure, right, how detailed the 10 megahertz channel will be defined. That we'll get to that in a second, because we do have some questions around things like that. But that's really, the hope is that we'll have by the end of this year, a report and order, that the community can see and comment on. It may not be published, right? It's pretty clear to me that with the FCC's times frames, it may not be sort of officially published, but if it can be like the 6 gigahertz rulemaking, right, where we saw drafts in August, September timeframe, voting in November, and then they just published the rule in January, and then it goes into effect on March 8th, right? If there's a similar time frame there, we think that might be achievable. But again, the FCC will never agree or disagree with that statement. They'll continue to tell us, whether, where they are in the process, and that's the best we'll get out of them. Next slide, please. So, longer term plans, we're obviously continuing to talk to them about additional spectrum, right? I think their message to us has been, you guys got to use the spectrum you have before, we get into too many details about the additional spectrum. But we have been looking at, making the case for this additional spectrum. We are, watching, I know the SAE, Cooperative Driving Automation Technical Committee, has been doing some work in that area, right? Outlining what, platooning, spectrum needs might be, maybe sensor sharing spectrum needs, those types of things. And that's useful because it'll help us go back to the FCC with some hard data on, hey, this is why we need additional spectrum, and what, what we would actually use it for. There are, like I said, the way we sort of foresee this going is probably, again, similar to the 6 gigahertz rulemaking, where there'll be a report and order and probably further notice of proposed rulemaking. One of the things we're very much want to get industry, thoughts on, and I know there's a lot of folks here that probably have ideas, but sort of what is the use of that 10 megahertz channel, right? Is that I know the SAE Cellular V2X technical committee has been, sort of, I think, exploring options for sort of platooning within that 10 megahertz using LTE V2X. So that's one option. But there's another option of, do we want to be a little forward looking and potentially, have that new radio, that 10 megahertz available for sort of a new radio channel at some point in the future, right? These are things I don't think we're going to answer right now, but we want community input. We want to, get ideas. I think there's a number of folks that we've talked to in the community that are dead set against it being a guard band. I know there's folks that have been that have pushed that as an option, but that's sort of we're looking at how do we maximize the use of that 30 megahertz, and so the 10 megahertz channel I think is the one area where we haven't had a strong sort of community push behind how we want to use that. The 20 megahertz is very clear, LTE V2X and the rules for how to use it. The 10 megahertz, I think, is something that we want to continue to look at, and we want to get industry feedback. And so you'll see us probably reaching out with questions and comments and requests for input on those sorts of topics moving forward. And the other thing that I'll just mention real quickly is that that higher power level for LTE V2X would be enabled by a geofencing concept. I don't know that we're really ready to talk too much about that. It's been sort of industry talks with NTIA, sort of fleshing out the idea. We're going to introduce that topic with FCC soon. We've already introduced it as a sort of a high level topic previously. So we're going to get into some more details, and then you'll probably see a lot more about that. We'll be able to share more about sort of what is this concept and how does the industry feel about it. But so that'll be something else to look for us for sort of comment in the future. And then, finally, we do have a lot of, questions for the community around this FCC process, right? One, we've heard of the FCC certification and waiver process issues. I know it was, I think, 2 weeks ago that the FCC released an updated sort of test procedure for that waiver, testing. So we're hopeful. The implication was that the publication of that document was going to sort of hopefully unstick a number of certifications and things. But we're also would love to know if that's not the case, right? If you're a vendor and you're having trouble getting that certification, please let us know. We can check in with the FCC about it again. It is something we want to keep on top of, especially because the DOT very much now is pushing the acceleration of V2X deployments, right? And so anything that could be holding that process up, we would like to know about and see if we can address it. The other question is, are there other issues that the industry is encountering when they're deploying V2X devices, right? Are there other spectrum related issues? Are you running into any interference issues? Are there any issues, around, procuring devices, things like that, like, any sort of general issues, we would also love to hear about. Obviously 1609.2.1 is another area where, we're very much, in support of pushing forward into 1609.2.1. I think there are some mechanisms of the original, SCMS concept that 1609.2.1, helps improve. And so we would like to see, the industry move there to this more interoperable system. It also adds, mechanisms so that you don't have to rebootstrap your device if you want to add PSIDs later, things like that. Those are big capabilities. And so if you're implementing, we would love to know from vendors, are you implementing 1609.2.1? And if not, why not, right? I know in the past there hasn't been a real call for it in deployments, but we're hoping to sort of start pushing folks into that realm. But we're interested in, from hearing the device vendor community, let us know if there are things that are problematic for them with 1609.2.1. And finally, like I touched on before, what is industry thoughts on the 10 megahertz usage of the 10 megahertz and the 5.9 gigahertz band? And I really think it comes down to, right, is that an LTE V to X band defined as just LTE V to X, or is that or is that sort of a transitionary band maybe that we can play around with new radio V to X in at some point, right? Those are the types of things we would love to get feedback on. We're working on sort of what are the right events and mechanisms for maybe capturing this type of data. So you'll probably see these types of questions appear in different forums. But if you have any thoughts that you really want to express right now, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to take any feedback that you all have. And I think that was my last slide.
Justin, thank you so much. And Mark, thank you as well. That was a whirlwind tour through, what I wanted Brikinda to ask me, what should we call the session? Everything you always wanted to know about C-V2X waivers and the second report in order, but we're afraid to ask. But she said that would not fit on a slide. So you guys did a fantastic job at this. And I know a lot of questions are percolating. So while people are thinking about their questions, entering those into the chat box, or just simply raising your hand, let me get the ball rolling. So Justin, the national deployment plan, the draft national deployment plan, Omniair provided our comments. I know a number of organizations did as well. And you mentioned that you're digesting through those. Could you maybe just speak to that, what you were seeing in the comments? Did anything surprise you? What are sort of the next steps? What will we see in terms of a final deployment plan and how it might be used?
Yeah, so we're internally, as I mentioned, we got a lot of comments, probably thousands and thousands of comments. I don't know that there's anything that we received that was super surprising, but I will just say that we did get a great mix of both positive and negative comments, and the negative comments are good. We appreciate those too. We need to understand sort of the issues people have with it. And so I think because of the volume of the comments that we have, what you'll see is sort of a comment report. A lot of the comments are similar. There's a lot of folks that had the same sort of comments. So what we'll do is those sort of common categories will be grouped up, and we'll discuss how we're addressing sort of those groups of comments. So you will see a document that talks about the comments that we received, and that we that is going to talk about how we're addressing them. However, I don't know that we figured out whether we're going to release the raw sets of comments. So that's sort of unclear right now. But the last thing is we are working on an update to it, obviously based on those comments. We are, we're working on sort of those two documents in parallel, the update to the V2X deployment plan and this comment resolution report type of document. And so, I think we're roughly planning, late spring, is sort of the timeline for when you'll hopefully see some more of that, potentially, around some of the bigger events that are happening in April and May, right? It's still, I think, a little unclear as to what the specific time frame of when we'll get these out, because these have to go through like higher levels of approval above us, and that's where we don't have as much control over that part of the process. Timelines can get lengthened there. Oh, I think you're on mute, Jason.
Oh, I just said that if it happens to fall in mid-May, I can take a where you could make some announcements. Wanted to open the floor and see if there are any questions for our guest speakers. Don't be shy. Mr. McKinley gets the ball rolling. Thanks for a great presentation, Justin. One question related to 1609.2.1. Bill, do you just want to put your mic on and ask them?
Sure. Sorry. Thanks, Justin. Nice to meet you again. Yeah, just related to 1609.2.1, SCMS management, distribution of search. Are you working with MNOs, network operators, on their coverage, performance? Any comments on that and how it's tested?
Yeah, so we're actually so in not just we're talking with MNOs and looking at it for a wide range of ITS use cases, not just 1609.2.1, but that will be sort of like the SCMS sorts of functions like certificate downloads, CRL downloads, CTL download, that sort of stuff will definitely be sort of captured in that data, right? We'll look at that performance and evaluate sort of the performance for those types of use cases. But we're actually looking at it from a much broader perspective of what are sort of the different latencies and performance requirements for different ITS use cases, right? Even getting down to looking at like, in a vehicle and pedestrian sort of intersection, right? Does the kinematics of a vehicle and a pedestrian mean that you could use, cellular for a pedestrian with LTE to X for vehicles, right? Looking at sort of that straight performance, and really trying to explore the performance metrics like latency, reliability, throughput, jitter, those types of true network performance. So we could sort of characterize maybe what are good ITS use cases that make sense for the cellular technologies.
And maybe just one supplemental question then. Are you
Sure.
looking at kind of MEC instances that are
Yep.
part of the mix on that?
Yep.
And do you think
Yeah.
it'll be a requirement? Do you think it will be a requirement for MEC to be involved, or do you think the normal non-MEC performance will be okay for some use cases, for example?
Well, I think for some,
critical.
yeah, I think for some definitely regular UU cellular without MEC will be fine. Well, but we are trying to understand, we are trying to get MEC resources to test with as well to sort of see the difference. I think one of the things that we're struggling with is sort of, as we've talked to the MNOs, what you find out is that MEC, there's the MEC that's the cloud compute capability that's at the base station, but then there's all these other things that they sort of can layer on top of it, like network slicing and sort of like the different sort of for lack of a better word, like hot lanes within the back end of the network, right? And we're trying to understand sort of what service offerings incorporate all of those different elements, because you'll get much different performance, right? Like if you have network slicing or a hot lane, right, you're talking about like a difference of between 10 milliseconds and 1,000 milliseconds in some cases potentially, right? And it's much different performance. So we're also trying to get a better idea as to what are the architectures of these cellular networks to allow us to understand, like, okay, well, this set of use cases is okay, but you would have to have MEC involved, right? But this set of use cases is fine just with regular UU cellular. It's like things like traveler information messaging and things like that, where it's not very latency dependent in most cases. Probably regular UU cellular is fine for a lot of that stuff. But those are the things that we want to explore in our testing. And like I said, we really want to get down into the guts of these sort of cellular architectures so we can be more precise in what we're recommending and making sure that folks know that, like, hey, you can get this level of performance, but it requires like network slicing and a MEC, right? Which is probably going to be way more expensive for you than just regular UU cellular connection.
I hate to hog the place, but you just took what? How it's like a hand in glove. Are the FCC looking for the network side in order to be confident that they can actually get the second report and order out? It seems to be deployment of certs over the network is an integral part of even direct communications, right? So how closely related are these two things? You're in the middle of it, obviously, but do you feel there's a strong connection between them, these two?
No. Honestly, for the FCC, they really just care about what they're focused on are setting the different power levels and out of band emissions targets and the mask things.
Okay.
They don't care about the SCMS stuff at all. Honestly, they don't go to that level. They're just true wireless, like just that wireless environment is what they care about.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Mark, did I see your microphone come on? Did you want to weigh in on that?
No, I just was anticipation if any question came up, but I need to drop right at 2, so right at the hour.
Let's last chance. Do we have any other questions for our guest speakers? Well, maybe I would just invite you guys, if you would like, to put your email addresses in the chat box. If people wanted to reach out to you individually, and we will have slides available, assuming our speakers are okay with our sharing them for folks. If there are any questions, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join today. Really appreciate it. Appreciate our guest speakers, Justin, Mark. I learned a ton. I'm sure many of you did as well. So thank you again, and look forward to seeing everyone next month.